Most of us spend a huge chunk of our lives in the office, and we tend to think of it as, well, a pretty safe place. But what if it's not? What if, from the cables under your desk to the data flashing on your screen, it's actually filled with hidden dangers? Well, that's exactly what we're about to uncover.
Go on, take a good look at your workspace right now. It probably seems pretty harmless, right? Well, today we're going to peel back the layers and reveal the unseen risks that might be lurking in plain sight. I think we're about to completely change how you see your everyday office environment.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 4 parts. We'll start with the really tangible stuff, physical and electrical safety. Then we'll zoom in on your long-term health with ergonomics. From there, we're making the jump into the digital world to talk about identity, and we'll wrap it all up with the crucial rules that protect your personal data.
Okay, first up, physical and electrical safety. Look, before we can even begin to talk about cool stuff like cybersecurity or data privacy, we have to start at the very foundation, the physical infrastructure that powers everything. Because honestly, if that's not secure, nothing else matters.
Let's start with a number. 25 milliseconds. It's almost faster than you can blink. But that's how quickly a little device called an RCD, or residual current device, can cut the power and literally save your life. Imagine you spill water on your computer setup. That electricity could try to find a new path, right through you. An RCD shuts it all down before that shock can seriously harm your heart. It's an absolute lifesaver.
All right, let's talk about something we all use but probably don't think twice about. Extension cords. This is a massive fire risk. The main thing you need to know is about the American wire gauge system. And it's a little counterintuitive, but the lower the gauge number, the thicker the wire, and the more power it can handle. Plugging a high-powered server into a flimsy 16-gauge cord meant for a lamp, that's just a recipe for disaster.
And that brings us to the golden rule. You need to hear this. Never, ever, ever plug an extension cord into another extension cord. It's called daisy chaining, and it's incredibly dangerous. See, each cord adds electrical resistance, and that resistance creates heat. When you chain them together, you're just multiplying that heat, dramatically jacking up the risk of an electrical fire. Just don't do it.
Okay, we've secured the hardware. But what about the most important and complex machine in the whole office? I'm talking about you, the human body. That brings us to our next section, ergonomics. This is all about preventing that slow, creeping damage that can happen from just sitting at a desk all day.
A huge danger here is something called repetitive strain injury, or RSI, and it's sneaky because it comes in stages. Stage 1 might just be some mild aches at work that go away when you rest. Easy to ignore, right? But if you do, you could hit stage 2, where the pain sticks around after work, maybe even waking you up at night. Ignore that, and you could find yourself in stage 3, constant, severe pain that might actually be irreversible. The takeaway is simple. Listen to your body and deal with discomfort early.
So what can you do about it? Well, there's a whole toolkit of things that can help. A split keyboard, for example, just lets your arms sit in a much more natural, relaxed position. A vertical mouse puts your wrist into a neutral handshake grip, so you're using your stronger shoulder muscles instead of tiny wrist tendons. These aren't just gadgets, they're smart solutions to real biomechanical problems.
Now, let's talk about your eyes. Staring at a screen all day causes something called digital eye strain. The best way to combat it is the super simple 20-20-20 rule. So here's the first part. Every 20 minutes,
You need to look away from your screen and focus on something that's about 20 feet away.
For at least 20 seconds. So 20, 20, 20. Simple, right? But why does it work? It gives the tiny little muscles inside your eyes, which have been clenched while focusing up close, a chance to finally relax. It's a mini break that prevents fatigue and those nasty screen-induced headaches.
Okay, so our equipment is safe, and our bodies are protected in the physical world. But let's be real, so much of our work, and even our identity, exists in the digital world now. And that's where the next set of dangers is hiding. Our first line of defense is simply proving who we are online. This is all about authentication. And that leads us straight to multi-factor authentication, or MFA. The best way to think about it is this. A password is like a single lock on your front door. MFA is like adding a deadbolt, a security chain, and an alarm system. It demands multiple pieces of evidence, or factors, to prove it's really you, which makes it so much harder for attackers to break in. So what are these factors? Well, they basically fall into 3 buckets. The first is knowledge. That's something you know, like your password or a PIN. The second is possession. That's something you have, like your phone, getting a code, or a physical security key. And the third is inherence. That's something you are, like your fingerprint or your face. Real strong MFA always combines at least two of these. So you've got all this amazing digital security set up. It's great. But what if the biggest threat isn't a hacker thousands of miles away? What if the danger is a person physically standing right behind you? This is the very real and very low-tech threat of shoulder surfing.
So how do you stop someone from just watching you type in your password? Well, there are some really effective, simple strategies. The best is to position your desk so your back is to a wall. If you can't do that, get a privacy screen for your monitor. You know, the kind that makes the screen look black from the side? But honestly, the ultimate defense, use biometrics. Use your fingerprint or face to log in. It's kind of hard to steal a password that no one ever sees you type.
We've now secured our hardware, our bodies, and our digital identity. But all of that is really in service of protecting something even more valuable and completely invisible, our data. So this final section is all about the rules and rights that govern that powerful asset.
First, let's get a key distinction straight. You'll hear the words validation and verification thrown around. Data validation is basically an automated, sensible check. Does this email address have an @ symbol? Does this date field contain a real date? But data verification is about confirming if the data is actually correct, usually by checking it against the original source. So one checks for proper format, the other checks for truth.
And that leads us to modern data protection laws like GDPR. They're built around a few core principles. Data minimization says you should only collect the data you absolutely need. Purpose limitation means you can only use it for the specific reason you told someone you were collecting it for. And storage limitation says you can't just keep it forever. The whole thing is a framework built around respecting our privacy. So what does that whole framework mean for you personally? It means you have rights. You have the right to be informed about how your data is being used. You have the right to see it, the right to correct any mistakes, and, this is the big one, the right to have it completely erased. You might have heard this called the right to be forgotten. It puts you back in control of your own information.
So, to wrap this all up, let's look at this quote. It reminds us that none of these topics exist in a vacuum. Electrical safety, ergonomics, digital identity, data governance, they're all pieces of the same puzzle. A failure in one of these areas can bring the whole system crashing down. Real, sustainable progress relies on getting all of them right.
And that really leaves us with one final question to think about. Our workplaces are changing so fast, with AI integration, fully virtual offices, the list goes on. As this evolution continues, what new challenges are going to pop up? What will be the next hidden danger that we all need to identify